Okay, newsflash from the Clash. This is the big one. We've been waiting for this. This is. I'm trying to tell you how the magnitude of this battle. Stalingrad is like on a league all its own. It's like bigger than like the Rumble in the Jungle, Thrill in Manila, you know, Yankees Red Sox, Celtic Rangers. This battle makes the Spartans, the 300 Spartans in the ancient world, look like grade school t-ball. Okay, this is on a whole different level. All right, and Hitler, you'll see, learns something that one of my history professors told me years ago. He said, "If you learn nothing from me, remember this: don't mess with mother-in-laws, Mother Nature, or Mother Russia."
'Autumn 1942. Europe lies crushed beneath the Nazi jackboot. The German Third Reich is at the height of its power. Hitler's armies are charging through the heart of the Soviet Union towards the oil fields of Asia. One last obstacle remains: a city on the Volga where the fate of the world is being decided: Stalingrad.
Okay, Stalingrad, the Clash of the Titans. Right away, you can already see August 22nd, 1942 to February 2nd, 1943. If you recall from our Battle of France, Blitzkrieg is dependent on one thing, and I've said it and said it and said it, and you know this, dependent on speed. You can tell by the dates, this was not a very swift victory for the German army. I mean, it was a loss, but for an army dependent on speed, that is way too long of a time frame. Okay, fascism versus communism, tyrant versus tyrant. Now, these two characters here are, you know, two of the most brutal dictators ever. And I think it's important just to note before we get started that even though they had that non-aggression pact, that was to buy time. Okay, Stalin had read Mein Kampf, which, if you remember, was Hitler's very racist kind of Bible on how he viewed the world. And in that book, he mentioned the term Lebensraum, which is something we've covered previously, which means living space. The idea that the German people are superior and need to head east for the vast resources. Okay, he believes they're superior to who he calls inferiors or Slavic peoples, which are he considered people in Russia to be. And this is where we're going to see the radicalization of the war. As soon as they go in to, as soon as they go in for Operation Barbarossa, it's no longer like, okay, we beat these people. No, they went and like, raped and pillaged the country basically, and he'll see that those kind of methods totally backfire when he gets bogged down. Okay, some background into the battle at Stalingrad. So it's part of Operation Barbarossa, which was Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. Again, the German Blitzkrieg depended on speed. They absolutely dominate from the outset. They have an enormous mass of land to cover, but Hitler splits up into three groups: Army Group A, B, and C, and they absolutely dominate. The Soviets are not ready. It's also very rural, kind of agrarian society, especially just near the border there. And they just go at a tenacious speed. And funnily enough, they can see they're I think 60 kilometers outside of Moscow, and they get held up by same old thing, Russian weather. Initially, it happens with too much rain, and their tanks can't move. But then the winter comes in, and even back when Napoleon tried to invade Russia back in, I don't quite recall the year, the Russian winter gets you, okay? And these soldiers were not prepared for this kind of weather. But they kind of sit tight, and they think when the spring comes, we can take Moscow. But they're tight on oil, so that means they have to head south to the Caucasus. So Hitler reroutes the troops. Okay, so Stalingrad. It's an industrial city on the river Volga, which is important because if they capture that city, they can cut off the river, which in turn would stop all oil supplies from going up to Moscow. But more than anything, Hitler becomes obsessed with Stalingrad because of its name. He figures if he can get Stalingrad, that'll really, really, take out the wind out of Russia. And especially, it's a battle between these two guys, right? So, in a sense, they are kind of like two little kids. Like, oh, your name's on that, I'll take that kind of thing. So, an important thing to keep in mind, Stalingrad is not essential by any means in conquering Russia. They could have gone down and got to the Caucasus without going through Stalingrad, but it shows Hitler's obsession of he puts all his efforts into this one city. Okay. So another thing, following the retreat at Moscow, Hitler issues a no-step-back policy. Stalin also issues a similar policy. This is where things get kind of very nasty for people involved. And I'll explain here in a second.
Okay, so just to follow up on that last slide, once this becomes personal, things get out of hand in a big way. Hitler is so ashamed that they had to sort of retreat from Moscow, and is frustrated with the slowness, they had to wait through the winter, whatever, that basically what the Germans have going for them is they have outstanding leadership. Okay, those same guys we talked about before, Guderian's there, von Manstein's there. Okay, but because of the slow progress around Moscow, Hitler fires them, relieves them of command. Like, what an idiot. Okay, they're the two stars, and you'll see that it's a progression through that phase of the war. Hitler stops trusting people, and he takes direct command of the military. So once he does that, they're doomed. Hitler has no real leadership experience in a military sense. He was a foot soldier. He was a messenger boy, really, World War One. He was a failed artist, all this stuff, but this is he's buying into his own doctrine of being supreme. So it's all gone to his head now, and we're gonna see what happens. Now on the other side, Stalin is freaking out. Okay, look at it from his perspective. The Germans have just advanced. Yeah, they got stalled outside of Moscow, but like the Russians haven't won anything yet. So Stalin does something out of desperation, and he calls on. You have to understand, when he's a communist dictator, everything's for communism. It's all for the Communist Party. That's all he talks about. But he realizes that his people need another kick. So he does something that is very out there for him, and he calls on the great Russian people of the past, before communism even started. Okay? And that inspires some people. Another big thing, all those atrocities that the Germans have done all through Russia, word has spread big time about what they've done. Like, they've gone into villages and of civilians, and they would kill the family pet first, and then they'd kill the children, and then they'd kill the wife, and then they'd kill the husband, and they'd hang them up. Like, some of the worst atrocities, okay? So word is spreading to the rest of Russia. This is how they're treating them. And the reason they're doing it is Hitler's belief they're subhuman, they don't matter, whatever. And also, remember we talked about the drug use. That's, I think, another big part too. But in retaliation, Stalin has issued what you call scorched earth. And that is, all the retreating Russians are just destroying anything of use. So I'm talking houses, farms, any water systems, anything. They're just destroying everything so that the Nazis or the Germans can't have anything useful while they're proceeding. Okay, and so it's all lined up for this big battle at Stalingrad, and Stalin also tells the people of Stalingrad they're not allowed to leave. Okay, so that makes things pretty difficult in the city. Okay, move on, next slide.
Okay, so once the battle starts with the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force. They just carpet bomb the city. Okay, they absolutely destroy it, and it creates an almost apocalyptic landscape. Okay. Now, then the artillery comes. So the what do you call it? The infantry haven't even got there, and already the place is destroyed. Now, in Hitler's view, this is good because it's like, oh, great, we took their souls or whatever. But the opposite takes place, okay? The bombing of the city creates a perfect environment for guerrilla warfare, which the Russians become exceptional at. That is, snipers, and we'll get there. This is essential to warfare in the 20th century, as the world can see how it is impossible to defeat an enemy that you cannot see. That's not worded the best, but you can't see them, you can't get them. So, whereas they thought that first step would have just dominated, it has the opposite effect. And urban warfare at the best of times is something that every infantry unit dreads. Okay, there's just too many hiding places. You're going room to room. It's not an easy thing to do, and Hitler kind of shoots himself in the foot in that sense. So this video, or the Stalingrad lesson, is going to be split up into two. This is the end of part one. I just put up the key players here. On the left, we have General Paulus of the Sixth Army. Of the German Sixth Army. He's known as a bit of a backroom star. Probably not the ideal person for this task. He's a bit hoity-toity, not really get your hands dirty type, which definitely isn't suited to this battle. But and he won't. Another thing we'll see, he's not gonna morph orders or interpret orders to his own advantage, like Guderian would. And it's gonna kind of backfire on him. On the right, we have Russian General Zhukov, and this guy is something else. I mean, he is, you know, incredibly. He comes up with an incredible plan. He's very cunning, ambitious, and a real soldier, as they say. But the big thing that he understands is that once they've bombed that, bombed the city like they did, he understands about guerrilla warfare. So in guerrilla warfare, you try and use your weaknesses as strengths. So if, for example, the Germans are big and you're small, then you're mobile and they're slow. You're hidden and they're exposed, especially in the rubble. And you can only fight battles that you know you can win. Then you capture their weapons and you can use them against the Germans the next time. Well, it's not necessarily about weapons captured, but they use similar tactics that the Germans have had success. So it's like give them a taste of their own medicine. Okay, that's it for part 1. We'll see you next time for part 2.